Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we are going to talk with a face that is familiar to a lot of folks in Hampton, especially Kicquetan area, who is now on WAVY as one of the meteorologists. Ricky Matthews, welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You know, it's fun to see somebody on TV that you know, right? Like all of your classmates and people who know you in the neighborhood.
Yeah, the first day I was on air, the Facebook posts, the Twitter messages, and the tweets, and the text messages, my phone blew up for a little bit because everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, I know him!"
Right. It's
cool.
A lot of fun. And I'm going to say something that you told me the other day, that they call you the mayor of Hampton at WAVY. You are a huge Hampton booster. I mean, that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, our station is located on the south side. We're located in Portsmouth, so we have several people who live on the peninsula, but we don't have as many people who live on the peninsula. So they always joke that, hey, you're like the Hampton person because you know things around there, kind of what's going on, some people in the city, some people in the high schools, some of the people who live here. And so it's really neat to be able to have that local connection and then transfer that into what we do on air, on our broadcast, on our digital side, just in our day-to-day operations.
So tell me a little bit, you grew up here. Went to school here, went to Kicquetan.
So I went to Phillips, Sims, and Kicquetan. That was a 3 rotation.
Right.
My grandfather was an Air Force pilot. He flew F-4s in Vietnam, and then he retired from the Air Force and started flying for the airlines. And so his last duty station was here in Hampton Roads. And so they settled here in Hampton off of Little Back River, and then my parents ended up getting a house here. And down the road, everything kind of just fell into place, and then graduated from Kicquetan in 2011, then went to college in Charlotte, and then my first job on air was in Bristol, Virginia. So I joke that I literally worked as far west in the state of Virginia as I possibly could get, but still worked in the state of Virginia for my first job.
Barely. I mean, Bristol's right on, half of Bristol's in Tennessee.
Yeah, one side of downtown is in Tennessee, one side's in Virginia. So, but happy to be back on the coast, happy to be back in Hampton, and happy to be back to kind of doing weather here. I always was kind of active in the Hampton weather community.
What is the Hampton weather community?
Okay, so some of the meteorologists on the TV stations have known me over the years. I interned at some of the stations here back in college. But even before that, when Twitter started becoming popular, I was that person who was always tweeting weather information. And perhaps to the dismay of Hampton City Schools sometimes, when everyone wanted them to close because of snow, and then I would be like, guys, it's really not going to be that bad.
That's unusual, because my gripe about TV meteorologists is that sometimes they hype and overhype the weather. And I know you don't always know what it's going to be, but sometimes it's just like it hits this frenzy. And I know that's TV wants you to stay tuned.
And a huge part of that nowadays is social media, because there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
The best comparison I can give you is forecasting for weddings is really fun, because people have this mindset of they always lock on to the best solution or the worst solution. They always kind of go for one of the two extremes. And so our job is to always, first off, be right. Second, make sure we're communicating it in a clear, concise manner, because a forecast that people don't understand is not a worthy forecast at all. It's worthless. And so we have to make sure people are understanding it. But you're right, forecasts do change, and that's something to be expected, especially in bigger events, snowstorms, hurricanes, stuff like that. And it can be so localized. We're unfortunate that a lot of the impacts from hurricanes are often felt along the coast or forecasted right around the center of the eye. So we're forecasting, let's say, a Category 3 hurricane. It's got winds of 111 miles per hour. Those winds are just in a teeny little spot around the eye. But the storm can be 300, 400 miles wide. You can have impacts from tidal surge. You can have so many different impacts that we have to break down and communicate.
So you really are a science nerd, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I joke a lot of times that we're going to get a little geeky today. We're going to be a little nerdy in how we're explaining this. But I really like to explain things and talk about why it happens, because when people understand what's going on. They understand why there's such loud thunder. They understand why the winds are blowing so crazy right now. They're not as scared of it. A lot of people who have been through traumatic weather events in the past, like tornadoes or hurricanes, or even they were struck by lightning or something, they actually go on to become meteorologists because they want to learn more about it. And that wasn't my case, but a lot of times that does happen, and we see that a bunch with some of my colleagues in meteorology across the nation. They had some event that triggered their interest in weather. For me, my event that kind of triggered it can probably be traced back to second grade at Phillips. We had a nor'easter that went from rain to snow, and that's like my earliest weather memory. Then in fifth grade, we had Hurricane Isabel, which
that shapes life right
there.
Yeah,
which anyone here who's lived in Hampton for any amount of time has probably heard either people talk about or probably went through Isabel. So Isabel was my first big storm. Of course, I was younger at the time. I was standing on my front porch pretending I was a meteorologist talking about it while...
Were you really?
Yeah, there's a tape somewhere. My parents have it somewhere. We really got to dig it up and put it online one day. But, we lost a couple trees in our backyard. We had a ton of shingles blow off our roof. Like many people, we were without power for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
My grandparents' house is closer to the water. They had water come within inches of coming into their house. And many people that I know down on, Grandview and other parts of Hampton had worse experiences with water. So, from Isabel in 2003 to then after I developed a pretty strong interest for weather, we had Sandy, we had Irene, the November nor'easter that we had a couple of years back in, I want to say it was 2009, that just pummeled the water up for 3 or 4 days.
With climate change and land subsidence, so many of the biggest events for Hampton Roads have been in the last 10 years or 20 years. Like when you look back at that chart, it is kind of scary.
They have been, but the thing that still scares me is that we still haven't seen, quote unquote, the big one.
Yeah, I know.
And with the impacts of climate change, with the impacts of so many more people living along the coast because it's beautiful and they want to live there, my fear is a storm equivalent to like the 1933 hurricane that it went right up the Chesapeake Bay that caused like the highest surge on record at Sewell's Point.
Because people don't leave anymore.
Yeah,
they're afraid to leave their homes, or they don't want to leave their homes.
And that's a struggle we have to communicate. It's so hard to just tell people, hey, you need to leave. But we have a saying in meteorology that you run from the water and you hide from the wind.
Yeah.
And luckily, most of the time, our impacts here are not from the wind so much. They're from the water. Mm-hmm. And so, even if we can communicate that it's only going to be a couple hours, perhaps you don't even have to leave the city. Perhaps you can just go to somewhere else in the city that isn't as prone to flooding.
That's been one of our messages lately too. You don't have to check into a hotel. Yeah. You just go stay with a friend. Right. Maybe look for that zone C or D.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a real skill to translate the level of science knowledge you have, this much, to the level of science knowledge like me and the other viewers have, which is about this much. How did you learn to do that?
Well, people are a lot, smarter than they think sometimes. I mean, people really have an interest sometimes in weather, and they want to learn about it. And so, yes, I could sit here and I could talk about vorticity and geopotential height and all these weird, crazy science nerdy terms that people don't understand. But when you can explain it in a manner that they understand, they really kind of relate to it better. And I don't know how I do it. Sometimes we had an example I did the other day where we were talking about winds in a thunderstorm and what we call downbursts or microbursts. And so greatest comparison is you take a water balloon, you throw it in the air, it comes down, it smashes, and it kind of expands out. Well, the same thing happens in a thunderstorm with the strong winds. I don't know where I come up with these things, but they just
You were born to do this.
Sense in my head.
You really were.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, so why come back to Hampton Roads? I mean, we in Hampton, school system, city council really want our young people to stay or go to college or do the first job, but to come back.
Yeah.
You came back.
Yeah.
How come?
Well, I always wanted to use my knowledge of hurricanes and previous storms and severe weather to be able to better communicate. I feel like I have somewhat of a unique advantage because I've been through the previous storms. I've seen what minor, moderate, and major flood
Somebody
levels
from
do.
Chicago does not know.
Yeah. And bless her, my aunt came down here one time. I think it was Hurricane Irene. She invited us over for dinner, and we were all like, what? She's like, well, it'll blow over in a few hours, right? I was like, no, it's going to be a while. So we've taught her since then what hurricanes do. But, I love to be able to take my knowledge and communicate it better, talking about the specific community, specific rivers, creeks, stuff like that. How Grandview floods, how parts of Beach Road floods, down towards Buckrow, over into parts of downtown. You can have some water issues, even along Air Power Park area, Mercury.
Oh yeah, that's gotten bad lately.
Yeah. So it's just really neat to use my local knowledge to communicate.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. Is there anything you want us to know about you? For example, let me ask you this. When will we most likely see you on WAVY?
So my traditional on-air times are Saturday and Sunday mornings. We're on air from 6 to 8. Of course, we're on social media and our wavy.com website as well. I'm usually also on a couple noon shows during the week, but if you tune into us, there's a pretty good chance here and there you're going to see me because we were talking earlier, our job is unique in that when I take off or someone else takes off, it's not like that desk is just empty for the day. Somebody's got to fill in. So we do have a lot of fill-in time and a lot of different
Somebody with science knowledge has to fill in. It's not like, a reporter can fill in for an anchor or something like that. You've got to be very specialized.
There's 5 of us. We make a great team, and, we all have to work together in our scheduling, but also in our forecast and putting what we're going to put on air together. So I'm happy to, work with a good team and have a team that supports us. So.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to add before we close?
I don't think so. I think the other interesting thing about me is that I'm a giant airplane nerd. So there's a pretty good chance if you see me out in Hampton and the F-22s are flying around, I'll probably be looking up at them and checking them out. I think that stems back to, my aviation or my grandparents' aviation background. Mm-hmm. He taught me how to fly, and so then I got my pilot's license out at Langley. And so I've always kind of just had an interest in aviation too. And I think they go.
Do you still fly at all?
Yeah, I do. I'm still trying to get back into it here.
Right, you go away to college, you don't have time for all that fun stuff, do you?
And you have to find a place to either rent an aircraft or buy an aircraft and stuff like that. But I still fly. I've gotten more into drones and stuff like that. And WAVY is unique because we have a helicopter. I'm not licensed to fly that by any means, but I've started to work a little bit with the folks there.
Did you go up in it?
Yeah, I have been up in Chopper 10. Really great opportunities and really great storytelling tool that we have. And we have a great pilot too who handles all that for us. So, but cool opportunities, in aviation and weather. And so if anyone's interested in science and weather backgrounds, the key is to take as many math classes and science classes as you can, because there is a ton of math in both meteorology and aviation. And so that's a critical thing, with all the STEM careers and stuff like that are coming out. You really need a good background in math. Now, having said that, you don't have to be great at math. I wasn't great at math, okay? But I made it. I got through all the classes. So, hard work pays off in terms of doing all those classes and getting to where I am today and where people want to be in their future.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming by.
Absolutely.
And thank you for watching. Enjoy meeting one of our Hampton people who have done good things already at a very young age and came back to Hampton after college. We're thrilled to see that. So look for him on WAVY. Thanks for watching.